Welcome, everybody, to the Monday, March 3rd, 2025 Select Board meeting. I'd like to call to order.
Mantrick here. Mantrick, aye.
Tracy Harkoff here.
Capiello here.
Gibson here. Kosha here. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, agenda review and approval. The only thing we need to make an adjustment on is under H, 4 and 5. We are going to table those two. They're waiting for participation on the meeting.
So they haven't been able to attend a meeting yet. The Conservation Commission reviewed them. It'd be nice to get them involved in a meeting before the Select Board makes a decision.
Motion to accept as amended.
Second, roll call.
Aye.
Harkoff, aye.
Capiello, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Kosha. Okay, now we're going to open our first public comment session of the meeting. There's two. There's one now. Anybody in studio or online, please come up to the podium or raise your hand. Not seeing any participants in studio or online. We're going to go ahead and close public comment, and we're going to go to public hearing, and I'm going to move the podium. Okay, earlier in 2024, 73 Barrington kids submitted the I Voted sticker design in 4 age categories to be voted on in 2020. On March 12th, 424 Barrington kids, and they selected the sticker designs to be printed and used. And today, here, and I would like to open it up to the Select Board to comment on.
So I would be happy to comment. We'll start perhaps with the 0 to K sticker. Or would you like some general
Bring them up,
comment?
Jim? Yeah. Bring them up. Read the proclamation.
Riley, Ruby, Katie, and Matt.
Come up and join the chair at the podium.
We are so thrilled to have you here. Your designs are really awesome. And I think it's going to bring a smile to all the voters on March 11th.
And you can stay standing right up next to the chair. He's going to read something to you if you want to just line up right next to him.
A proclamation congratulating the winner. Whereas the 2020 Barrington Kids Vote invited children and to design town meeting. Whereas an assortment of 73 designs were children voted for their design. Whereas each petition demonstrates artistry for the whereas Riley sticker con will be distributed. Now, therefore, we, the Barrington, New Hampshire Select Board, do hereby proclaim Riley McIver, Cook, Elliott, and Matt Sylvia as the winners of the I Voted Barrington Vote Sticker Contest and extend our heartfelt congratulations to their achievement. Let this proclamation serve as a testament to their exceptional abilities to others, to excellence endeavors, and witness, therefore, we have here onto our hands and seal of the town of Barrington to of March 2025.
Anybody else from the select board
Now
wants to
I'll
say
open it
anything?
up
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
select-
Thank you guys very much for the great artwork and for really stepping up and being part of your community. You are part of our community, and we're really glad to have you here and participating.
And I don't have an artistic bone in my body, so I'm just amazed at the art that you all created. It's beautiful. And the most important part of all of this is you, as young people, are teaching the older adult members of the Barrington community that they have the opportunity and the responsibility to come out and vote. So thank you.
I'm the last, so I don't have much to add to all this, except thank you very much for your participation, and thank you for being a citizen of our town and demonstrating that so well, as the other people who entered this contest as well. Your commitment to our town and to the idea and concept of voting in a democracy is very impressive for us all. Thank you.
Take a brief break, take a couple pictures, and then resume the meeting.
And take pictures. Yes.
You don't have to commit. I'll be at the. So. And Ruby. Awesome eagle. How did you come up with the eagle? Did you draw that?
Come on, Dad. Come on. Hey, we got one, Dad.
All right, Jim, you want to stay up and Ron, you can stay all the kids.
Riley should be
Ruby, if you want to hand out any of your stickers on both to the Barrington Kids, I'll be there all day. I'll have stickers for you. You can hand them out to the adults or the kids. Yes, we do.
Oh, yeah, that.
Yeah, that.
Actually, yeah.
Of course you do.
So I did a bridal shower this weekend. And did an hour.
I did justice. 100 pieces of
Hanging out for the thrilling.
preparation for this. I couldn't get it right, the right.
Yeah.
I
I screwed up the flow because I was like, figure get a little bit more. No, I was just like, get a little bit more dialogue before we dive into the proclamation type thing. But I don't know. I tried my best.
You did fine.
It was great.
Okay, we're still kind of a new process for us. We arranged it different. We were in here earlier looking at the camera angles.
Okay. That was the best part. I
Great
love
to
it.
make the older comfortable too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dale, friggin' bus driver Dale, run me over. It was. It's okay. All right, are we live at 5?
We are good.
Okay.
Ready to
I'll be
continue.
live at 5.
All right. Excellent. I voted sticker. Designer recognition. So we are on to school board liaison. I'm not seeing anyone in studio today.
I don't think there's been a meeting since.
Yeah, they're probably getting ready for next week as we are. Okay, Conservation Commission Richardson Pond Dam discussion.
So
It's cheaper to do it.
just a brief introduction as the Conservation Commission Chair joins the table. So in the Town Administrator Report, certainly for Select Board members, but certainly for anybody that's interested, there's a comprehensive overview of the history of Richardson Pond Dam and the exercise we've been going through to figure out how to address the letter of deficiency issued by the Dam Bureau of the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. There are links to all the engineering studies and reports, the most recent ecological study, all in the Town Administrator Report. And so that should serve as anybody who's interested, that should serve as good background for the topic. So the most recent result was the receipt of the ecological study, which the Select Board received a copy of in their meeting materials from the last meeting. I'll let Doug speak to that, but he's had an opportunity to meet with the Conservation Commission, with the Mark West, the ecologist, and they've prepared a memo, which is printed and included in your packet. And so once we kind of get through that update, we'll just focus on what the next steps are and what we anticipate for the timeline moving forward. And with that, I'll turn it over to Doug, the Conservation Commission Chair.
Okay. I'm Doug Bogan. I think you all know me, but I guess if you recall, over a year ago, I think questions were raised as to whether there might be a different approach, a plan B, if you will, for the Richardson Dam situation that we've been dealing with for some years. And it was suggested that it would be worth looking into the removal of the dam as opposed to just rebuilding it. I would add that ecologically, that actually makes the most sense, in terms of expanding, improving habitat. Barriers obviously, cause trouble in environments, but particularly in waterways like Malago Creek, of which Richardson Pond is a part. So we undertook to hire a consultant to do the study, to look at what it would look like, or what would be the result if we were to remove the dam and bring that watershed back to its original, or at least to a more natural situation. And there are a number of factors that went into that, certainly looking at the water levels and how they would change, the changes in the habitats, the vegetation around the pond, and what it might affect certain species, and particularly ones that are threatened or endangered. So, you know, in the course of doing the study over the past year, it was determined that the water level would be significantly reduced. Richardson Pond, despite, you know, its kind of idyllic look, it's only a few feet deep in most places. It's basically 3 to 5 feet deep most of the time, at least in the summertime when the low water. You know, removing 3 feet, which is what the dam provides now, would you know reduce the pond significantly and change the habitat. So the results were that in consultation with a number of state officials that there would be significant damage to existing habitats, particularly for endangered turtles. I'm sure you're all aware of the Blanding's turtle and other turtle species that are rare in this area, and they are known to live in that vicinity. It would really affect their habitat. So what these officials told our consultant is that with that impact, it would be, one, unlikely to get a permit to make the changes, and two, it would be even more difficult to get funding to do the changes. So it really seemed kind of a pretty clear case of this isn't going to fly, whether we want to do it or not. Certainly would be more expensive and more damaging to the environment as it is now. So we're kind of back to plan A, I guess, looking at rebuilding the dam at a lower level so that it doesn't we don't have to deal with the State Dam Bureau, and we can get the situation cleared up and maintain access to one of our favorite conservation areas as well. So I think I'll leave my comments at that. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Sounds like we'll have to build a bridge and get over it.
Yeah, essentially, rebuild the bridge. Yeah.
So the bridge, the fire department has indicated in past conversations that they want to get a fire pickup over there.
Remember, we have the
A forestry
UTV too, right?
Why not use that?
Yeah, because you could probably get away with between, I don't know, 60 to 80 inches wide.
Yeah, it would be probably less.
Yeah, that was discussed extensively, and the challenge with that recreation area is it's expansive, especially from a forest fire standpoint. And we have recently opened up access from the other side, from Ross Road through recent logging operations, but Ross Road is the other access point to that conservation area. That's quite a distance away from the access created currently from the Richardson Pond Dam area. And as a natural...
Pasture Hill Road, that's a property too, doesn't it?
It comes up from the south
Okay.
and turns into Richardson Road
Okay.
on the south side.
Okay.
But it is through private property. It's not a
Okay.
public access.
Understood.
So yes, the recommendation from public safety professionals is that maintaining the current level of access to that conservation area that's for both rescuing people and fighting potential forest fires is important. And so the select board at that time had heeded that recommendation and included in the scope rebuilding that access bridge to maintain the level of access that exists now. Certainly this board could ask for a review of that as time went on, but the engineering, as far as next steps, most of the engineering will focus on reconstruction of the dam, how that feature, crossing the spillway, it's not an afterthought, but that's something that can be determined later on and doesn't impact tremendously the design or the design options.
Well, I'm assuming if you put a side-by-side over it, at a 1,000-pound pickup.
Definitely.
That cost is huge.
Yeah, building a bridge isn't going to be free.
And I'm not a fire professional or whatnot, but I envisioned, like, if somebody had to get, from there, they could take the side-by-side right up Route 9, right off of that trail.
per se, but like I said.
So the design proposal, the design work, wasn't that done in 2022?
So that was started. So
But
the
not completed?
not much progress was made at all before we took a break to focus on evaluation of the dam removal. And so I had CMA engineers refresh the task order from 2022. The price increased from about $50,000 to about $64,000. That's not because the scope changed a lot. That's inflation over the last 3 years. And so the next step would be moving forward with engineering the reconstruction of the dam. The scope that was reviewed and approved back in 2022, reviewing, making sure we're comfortable with the scope and moving. I caught up with Doug before his most recent Conservation Commission meeting. Did the Conservation Commission talk about the task order and moving forward at all?
No, we didn't. Unfortunately, we just had quite a few other things and several guests, but we'll certainly do it the next meeting. So.
And so what I had talked about with Doug was asking the Conservation Commission in the first instance to fund from the Conservation Fund the design scope as originally approved. Now, certainly the value of that engineering scope is approved, but what we talked about back in 2022 was that these contributions towards designing and reconstructing this project will create an overall cost, an overall budget, which the Select Board has previously committed to sharing in some way, shape, or form. And so the understanding that the Conservation Commission has cash on hand available without going to town meeting vote to get this engineering work done, with the hope or the expectation that we can go to town meeting in 2026 with a warrant article which funds the other portion of the reconstruction project, which isn't funded from the Conservation Fund. And so all that to say that balancing the scales of the costs, certainly the $64,000 contribution that the Conservation Commission may make towards this engineering proposal should be considered by the Select Board in weighing the cost share, the ultimate cost share of the reconstruction project.
That's how I recall everything. And there was the second engineer, or the town's engineer, didn't they say perhaps there was something about the original plan that was perhaps excessive, or that they thought that there could be other designs that actually would be more cost effective too?
They did. Yep. And they hadn't gotten that far. And so those are the types of design considerations I would expect to see with this scope.
And we're hoping to get that done this year, to get it on the warrant article for next year.
Yes.
Ideally.
So the first step, and I think it would be helpful for Doug and the Conservation Commission to hear from the Select Board, or more from the Select Board about the plan for funding the engineering study. And so I think the proposal under discussion is requesting the Conservation Commission fund the full engineering work with the Conservation Fund, which was previously approved at $50,000, currently stands at $64,000. And, to have discussion about that, and then Doug will certainly need to take that conversation back to the Conservation Commission to consider, that request and make a decision, and then report back. But to your point, yes, the schedule has conceptual phase completed in July, preliminary design in September, final design permitting phase in October, which would allow us at the beginning of town meeting warrant development, give us the ability to know, eyes wide open, what the cost is, contemplate the cost share conversation, which is difficult to do without knowing how much it's going to cost and what the design considerations are for, say, the bridge and other things. And so that's the plan as proposed.
So as I'm understanding it, your proposal is to ask Conservation Commission to fund the $64,100. Okay.
Yes.
I'm okay with that. I mean, it's, still gonna go to the voters, still gonna see how much it costs, but we don't know. We can't make stories about what we don't know yet.
In addition to
we
a
can.
warrant, later we do have the capital reserve for bridges and dams that is accessible as well.
Accessible, but encumbered, right? So the dam capital reserve, which is likely the only capital reserve which we could use funds for this project for. Will rely on the contribution proposed to voters a week from tomorrow. And if that's approved by voters, we'll have just enough to complete the riprap filter and the spillway repairs. And we would hope to complete both of those projects later this fall. And so after those projects are complete, there aren't other projects on the even medium-term timeline for the Richardson or the Swains Lake Dam. And so certainly if we don't use all of the funds in that capital reserve, we could tap into that in addition to going to voters to ask for money. But I don't think we have the luxury of accessing those funds now unless we're prepared to delay one or both of those projects on Swains Lake Dam.
I assume once we get the design back, we're also going to see if we can source any type of grant for this?
No question.
Okay.
I will manage those expectations now by saying I have not seen a grant for dam reconstruction in my 6 years in municipal work. Dam removal, you can find grants. Are you aware of?
Well, no, I was going to add that I did look into it a couple of years ago when we were, looking at the original plan, and, they were saying, well, there might be funding for removing the dam, but there isn't going to be, or it didn't seem very likely. I mean, I only looked one or two, but, state monies, basically.
That said, we will certainly chase dollars anywhere we can find them, and we have very creative grant writers that can tie outcomes far beyond reconstructing a dam. But I just want to manage those expectations.
So today I found this article about Stratford's dealing with a dam too. I think these small dams are everywhere. Theirs happens to be on school property, so it's a school board cost.
Wow.
But they say they're removing it, and they have an ARM grant, ARM, but they don't talk about what that is. But they're taking it down to the berm. Take over. So I don't quite know what that is.
ARM is Aquatic Resource Management, and that's a pool of money in each watershed in the state. When there are wetland impacts that developers or builders, whoever's impacting the wetlands, pay into these funds, and they're distributed within the same watershed. So basically, if you're impacting a wetland, you make a penalty contribution towards the Aquatic Resource Management, and then it's issued out as grants for projects which improve aquatic resource management. And so we will absolutely be targeting that funding source for projects like the culverts and causeways on Young Road by Swains Lake. The big, in a nutshell, ARM grants, they want to see water crossings with natural bottoms. It's more complicated than that, but they want to see you take a culvert and they want to see you put in maybe a box culvert that you can establish a natural bottom to, or something with a span and have a natural bottom. And so there are some design restrictions for that. But it's not surprising that you could make an argument that dam removal is eligible for aquatic resource management dollars, because for the reasons Doug mentioned in his opening, there are a lot of aspects of dam removal which are beneficial. In this case, the net result seems to be that it's better to keep it. But so that's fascinating. Thanks for doing that research.
Yeah,
But I would mention the ARM grant is the one that I looked at and talked to some state people, and they basically said that the habitat improvement that could be done with the limited removal was minimal. There are fish species that could expand further up the watershed, but not a big deal.
For the bridge portion of it, with the safety and protection of forests, things like that, is there any other grants maybe around safety?
It's an excellent question. When I was saying that we have creative grant writers, that's kind of where my head was going to. Maybe not for the reconstruction part, but for the outcomes of things like the bridge or the recreation trails that are out back there. And so, no, it's an excellent point.
So in addition, and I'm just gonna throw that out there, and if nothing sticks with it, but that feeds the Malago, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Walked it plenty of times, but there's trout in there, and then back in the day, Major Waldron's used to match the state, and they would put trout in there, and they'd stock it. So I don't know if this is something where we could get a hold of maybe Trout Unlimited as well, and see if they have any monies to protect the trout and kind of preserve.
Well, again, the existence of the dam limits the trout, and that's specifically what we discussed, because they had you're right. They had sampled Malago Brook downstream of the dam, and they did find brook trout in particular, and a couple other species. But you know, it's pretty limited what you can do there. Although I should say it's worth improving the spillway, because right now there's about a 2-foot gap or something where, you know, even like frogs can't get up there. So
The big money federally, and this is probably going away, but is in anadromous fish. And anadromous fish are species that migrate from saltwater to freshwater for reproduction. So, you know, kind of think salmon, but in our area, it's more like eels and other things.
yes,
So we're close, right?
smelt.
So
is another one.
I kicked a lot of tires on this because there is some big money available right now, and the Bellamy Reservoir for this project is what stops us. And so anadromous fish are able to get all the way up to the Bellamy Reservoir, the impoundment at the Bellamy Reservoir. And so the state operates a
big wall.
like I think they call it like a truck and dump system. So part of the solution is they'll take and they'll capture the anadromous fish on the downstream side of an impoundment, and they'll truck them to the upstream. Not because they'll be able to survive and repopulate, but because they support the rest of the ecosystem, which has relied on them. And so they don't have that truck and dump program in place with the Bellamy Reservoir, but if they did, that may make our projects, both the Swains Lake Dam and the Richardson Pond Dam, eligible for anadromous fish grants, but we're not. So
we need to find an Uber ride for the fish.
for the anadromous fish,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Mhm.
Or we need to
Okay.
compel the city of Portsmouth to solve their anadromous fish problem, and
There you
then
have Okay. So do you need a motion, or are we just in agreement that we're going to allow Doug to bring this before the Conservation Commission?
consensus of the select board. Is there any dissenting opinion that that's the request from the select board?
Thank you, Doug.
Sure, okay. While I'm here, I did hear you're amending the agenda to leave out the,
Yes.
Mhm.
I was wondering, is that the whole list for the Concom or just the new one?
Just the two alternates.
4 and 5.
Yep. Just the
And
two.
just, you know, because we haven't had any communication with them.
Mhm.
Yep.
If you are in touch with them, my sense was that the interest was mainly in doing hands-on work like trails maintenance.
Mhm.
And you should remind them that you don't need to be a Conservation Commission member to be on the Trails Committee.
Mhm.
It is a subset of the Concom, but it's not required. And frankly, we want people that are more interested in all the other stuff. I mean, we all participate to some degree in the trails work, but again, you don't need to be that. So if that's easier, we do have one other possible candidate in mind.
Great.
So we'd like to get the best people to get. So.
Awesome.
Doug asked
Yeah.
me a question, so, and I didn't know the answer. Is there a limit on how many alternates for each?
It depends on the committee. So typically typically committees are able to have manage their membership. The Conservation Commission, and I hesitate to even bring this up, but the Conservation Commission technically, by town meeting vote, has 6 full members.
How many are on there
Really?
now?
5.
Well, so we've always managed it at 5 because why would you have 6 members of a board that has to make decisions? And so it's a head scratching circumstance. And I learned this when Ken was the chair and we talked about it. And it seemed easier, and it probably still is this way, easier to manage the membership at 5, which you have every right to do, 5 full members, than to go to town meeting and ask them to change it from 6 to 7 or 5. As it relates to alternates, I'm not aware of any limit on the alternates for the Conservation Commission. Some boards, committees, and commissions adopt rules of procedures and establish their membership and rules of procedures. Seem to remember reading in the Zoning Board of Adjustment rules of procedures that it's limited to 5 alternate members. Is that right, Tracy? Do you remember?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Alternate members on the zoning board, it's limited in the rules of procedure to 5. Am I remembering that right?
I thought it was 3.
3.
I can look real quick.
Either
at our
3 or 5.
bylaws.
So sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's limited by statute, sometimes it's limited by the rules of procedure. Unfortunately, not a one-size-fits-all answer.
Yeah, and I could check our bylaws.
Mhm.
There may be some guidance in there, but I'm certainly happy to have more people participate. We just want to be sure they're participating.
Yeah, and the trails, when we took the Trails Committee and made it a subcommittee of the Conservation Commission, we ended up with a whole grouping of alternate members of the Conservation Commission, because we took those existing appointed Trails Committee members and appointed them as alternates to the Conservation Commission. And I don't know, it seems to have worked okay for the Conservation Commission, but that could be something too to consider, how we delineate between almost like a working volunteer that'll go out and help build trails, and members of the, more policy-centered board of the Conservation Commission. Great.
Okay.
All righty.
Thank you for being here, Doug.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sir?
Okay, continuing on. Consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda as written.
Roll call.
Mancheck, aye.
Hardikoff, aye.
Capiello, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Sakoshai. Next brings us up to appointments. If there is anyone that I list in particular that you guys do have discussion, please raise your hand, or otherwise we'll enter into a vote.
Or you probably don't have to read them if you don't want to. I mean, we've discussed them
Oh,
all
can we
at the
group
last
these?
meeting.
Okay.
So you can ask if there's, we did pull 2 off the agenda. We tabled 2.
Yeah,
but
under
for the-
H 4 and 5, those are tabled. Anybody else have any other concerns or questions about the rest?
I move that we vote to approve all of the appointments that we've discussed previously, except for the 2 that have been removed from that consensus opinion.
Second. Roll call.
Mancheck, aye.
Hardikoff, aye.
Capiello, aye.
Gibson, aye.
Sakoshai. Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Moving on right through on to staff reports with T.A. McIver.
Yes, thank you. I am excited to share, this is the first of 2 meetings in March, but the only time I'll read through our work anniversaries for March. Stephen Paul has been in the Highway Department for 25 years. We were joined by Shane Elliott, father of one of the sticker designers, who also is a member of the Highway Department. And I want to point out that crew has been through the ringer in February. Every storm event has either been on a holiday, overnight, or on a weekend.
Yep.
And this is a group of people that are willing to drop everything on a moment's notice to come out and keep our roads clear and in good condition. Not surprisingly, Shane shared that he hadn't quite recovered from the 6 weeks of just event after event after event. But Stephen Paul is a guy that's been doing that for 25 years. And so much appreciation is owed to him and the whole crew. Eric Lindsay, who's Assistant Fire Chief, has worked for the town for 24 years. Peter Royce is our Treasurer. He's been involved for many, many more years, but he has served as Treasurer, or he has been involved in that capacity for about 20 years. Larry Kuhn, the Fire Department for 19 years, along with Will Lenharth, 19 years. Amanda Barber, who's certainly the Police Detective Sergeant, has been with the town for 9 years. Vanessa Price, our Town Planner, was hired 3 years ago this month, and Stephanie Sweeney in the Recreation Department was hired 2 years ago. The Select Board has the culmination of the Select Board's work is a week from tomorrow, right? The last year of our efforts in organizing policy and developing a budget and putting warrant articles together will be put in front of voters on Tuesday, March 11th. I've included in the Town Administrator report not only links to the important information, the most critical piece of information is the voter guide, which have been flying off the shelves. We have them distributed around town, and we're constantly printing more because people are taking them, reading them, passing them to friends. And so that is a valuable tool to anybody looking to learn about what to vote on. Absentee ballots may be requested now. We have the ballots in hand. Anybody who will not be present on the 11th can simply stop by the town clerk's office, vote the same time, turn the ballot back in, and go about their day.
What's the last day on that?
Monday.
Monday.
So we will
10th.
collect mailed-in absentee ballots on the voting day.
Okay.
We'll make sure that we coordinate with the post office for any that were mailed back to make sure we capture them. But there's no staff in the town clerk's office on voting day.
Sure.
And it is important, absentee ballots cannot be returned into a drop box or to anybody other than staff of the town clerk's office. In addition to the signs we have out in the town meeting voter guide, we've been featuring What's That Warrant article every day on social media. One warrant article that will end on Saturday, so we're closing in on that. The informational postcards should have hit mailboxes last week. Seeing nods, I hope you all received those. And again, that's a way to reach those people that aren't seeing things online, aren't attending meetings. We're reaching out to them. There's a new note on the vote postcard asking people if they'd like a mailed copy of the voter guide. We're happy to mail them one. To date, we haven't mailed anybody one, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't. And so that option is available to anybody that's interested. The candidate forum was on the 20th. The video recording is on the town's website and available at barrington.nh.gov/2025 candidate forum. I also included, we just finalized this today, but in your, at your seat, the Barrington Kids Vote ballot. So this was finalized today. I'm astounded that we received 107 sticker designs this year, up from 73 last year. And there was a team that took input from the community and staff members to identify those that would get voted on. And so we have some awesome sticker designs. The kids will vote on the dog tag color for 2026. You'll remember the select board delegated the road naming for the Barrington Common Road off Malago, connects over to Route 9. So that will be voted on. And then the rec department's going to put on a summer kids concert outside of their Thursday concert series. And they have some themes that they're considering, and the kids will decide on Tuesday. And hopefully some of our sticker designers we saw earlier will be handing out some of their sticker designs to folks that vote on Tuesday, which will be terrific.
Connor, I had two things with that.
Please.
The sign at the transfer station that is blank, could that have vote on March 11th?
Great suggestion.
And does it say what in here, I missed it, about what are the possible names that the kids are choosing from for the street name?
It's right on there.
Depot Road, Gathering Green Drive, Town Common Lane, and Welcome Way.
Okay. Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Questions? And folks have or will coordinate with the chair with their availability on Tuesday, I trust.
Yes.
Fantastic.
10 to noon.
Great.
10 to noon. I'll be there in the morning. I know you'll be around.
Just plug me in when you need me.
Okay.
But I'd prefer to be outside.
Yeah, whenever you need, but preferably afternoon through the evening.
I think that's going to be yours, and then you're going to be. Let me know when you get closer.
Well, I can,
I was
Yeah.
home at noon, so 1:30.
I have some training I'm supposed to attend over in Portland at 2 in the afternoon, so if it could be 4 o'clock or so, or
Okay.
And Jim, did you say morning?
Yes.
Great.
Thanks for doing morning.
Hey, I got it, guys. It's all good.
Okay, awesome. Included on here, although we talked about it last time, select board reorganization will happen at our next meeting in 2 weeks. Select board committee assignments. We talked about, at the last meeting, we talked about not necessarily having the representative attend all of the meetings, but have them be a liaison to the happenings of those committees. And so I think that's a very fair suggestion. And I think the best way to coordinate that is in discussing with the chair the committee responsibilities and interest, sifting out who will be assigned to what committee and who will plan to attend which committees, or make sure they have a point of contact if they're not going to attend all the meetings. So we'll plan to do that. Training opportunities, local official workshop, and the New Hampshire Municipal Association Conference in November.
MOAC?
In addition to the proclamations that you already did sign, there's one that I need a couple more signatures for. There will be, I think, 19 oaths by a DocuSign-ish. And then the assessing contract, I know it was signed by a DocuSign, but we're going to have you wet sign it. The other signer already signed it. So, yeah, that's it.
Excellent. No old business, and that'll bring us up to new business. And the sale of 2 tax deeded properties in mobile home cooperatives?
So this is a situation where the resident-owned communities have their own rules about who they have to accept members of the community. And so when we tax deed a property in those communities, typically the folks we're tax deeding also haven't been paying park rent. And so the leadership of these communities is eager to identify somebody to move into that community that will pay park rent and pay taxes. So because they have to go through their separate process, we've had success in the past in selling the property to the parks as an intermediate step and allowing them to sell them, find a suitable buyer, and sell them the property. A lot of times the park will institute other requirements, like they replace the mobile home so that it can be updated and further improve the community in that way. We don't get involved in any of that. What we would do is sell the mobile homes to the parks for the total amount of past due taxes, penalties, and fees. So everything that's owed to the town, anything that we could collect anyways, and then we would let them own the property and dispatch it as appropriate. And so you have the amount owed for the two properties under consideration for that now. And in one case, the park has actually already started the eviction process. So we're not even funding the eviction at this point. They're going through the eviction process, which is largely procedural. I think in both cases that the parks aren't aware of people actively living in either of the properties, but there are belongings in there, so you have to go through the eviction process regardless. And so, it won't be a done deal. The select board votes to head that direction tonight. This is here for discussion because if the select board's comfortable going that direction, we'll have to start a process to sell those properties in that way once the eviction process is over and otherwise. So,
Shannon?
Do we have some sort of assurance that these parks will not discriminate in all the variety of ways that people have discriminated in the past?
we do not.
But they are kind of similar to like an HOA.
I appreciate that, but again, do they have restrictions on they can't not accept someone because of their race, their color, their creed, their sexual orientation, etc.? Are those state laws that cover that, or?
I don't know, but I'm happy to research it.
One thing, and I know this because we do a lot of work in different mobile home parks throughout, is some parks will require, if you're the buyer, you have to live there with your family. You can't buy it for grandkids and not be present on the property. One of the things that I've seen or heard about. I was thinking the same thing as you were too.
Yeah, I'm not sure we want to be involved in that, selling land that may in fact become discriminatory at some point.
And it's property, right? So it's not the land. It's a stake in the land because they're member-owned, they're resident-owned communities. So yeah, I'm happy to research that. I'm not aware. We've been involved with the leadership, and a lot of times in these cases, the leadership hasn't changed. And I'm not aware of any accusations of claims like that. Not to say that it's not worth making sure that they legally can't do it.
Is the Pepperidge Woods Cooperative the one off of Hall Road towards the end of Hall Road?
These are both the ones off of Hall Road, the end of Hall Road.
So isn't that neighborhood, aren't the homes selling for like $350,000?
There are some in there that are selling at high
And we're
yields.
suggesting transferring that property for $18,000 tax owed?
We can only take what we owe in taxes.
So it would go to auction for just the $18,000?
Yes.
No, so that's all that the town would collect. So the former owner, in the state of New Hampshire, the former owner has two primary rights following a tax deed. First, they have the exclusive right to repurchase, which means that in the first 3 years, unless the town extinguishes those rights, the former owner has the exclusive right to come forward and pay the total amount of past due taxes, penalties, and fees and be deeded the property back. We generally don't hold on to the properties for 3 years because they just sit and deteriorate. So we go through a process sending what's called 90-day letters to extinguish those repurchase rights. That has been started, or that will be
90
started.
days.
Yeah, 90 days from when we know we'll be dispatching them. So, and that's what I mean. It's not a fast process. The second right is that the former owner has the right to any equity remaining in the property. And so if the town, and as we have done in the past, unencumbered properties that don't have any other layer of ownership or supervision like these resident-owned communities do, if they sell at auction for more than is owed to the town keeps what is owed and the auctioneer sends the remaining balance through a bill of interpleader to the former owner, typically handled through the courts. And so the reason this path forward is recommended for these properties is because we can't simply sell the properties at auction because there's no guarantee that who we sell them to will be accepted into the resident-owned community. This process isn't unique to Barrington. Not only have we done it before, but this is an approach other municipalities take, and it's in keeping good relations with the leadership of these communities, right? So the town isn't racking up that amount owed by paying park rent to these communities since we deeded it back in August, and so that's what's proposed.
So I have to agree a little bit with Dan, and like the one thing I would be concerned about is what will their process be in order to ensure selection of people that will be living in these communities?
In conversations before in past transactions, their selection criteria is finding somebody who is capable and willing to pay park rent.
Yeah, and I think we're getting into a little bit like out of our control type of thing. I think, these parks are very unique and some have, certain requirements, but I don't think, at an average Joe per se will have an issue getting in because, at the same time, they want another person to come in and pay park rent and they want a good person in, but that's, again, in their own park, not the town's park, their park that they pay for, so.
Are we doing a disservice to the prior owners? Like, by doing this, if we were to sell it at auction and it sold for the $300,000 or $325,000 that those units were being auctioned for or sold for, then we would be handing over the balance between the park rent, we'd give that back to, and there would be a large amount of money for the prior owner to find a new dwelling.
There wouldn't necessarily, right? Because there's, a tax collector's deed extinguishes all other liens or mortgages on the property, right? So other lien holders or mortgage holders have an opportunity to execute, pay the past amount owed prior to deeding, and then they can go through their own legal process to take ownership of the property. When a tax collector's deed is issued, all of those extinguish, but they don't extinguish for the former owner. And so that's the purpose of the bill of interpleader. So when there are surplus proceeds from the sale of the tax deeded property, those are turned over to the courts through a bill of interpleader, and some of those proceeds are used to find any other person or entity owed by that former owner or the property. And so, and then ultimately the former owner would receive any proceeds after that process. They would be, the last person in line per se. And so, yeah, I
hear you. So there could be a $200,000 mortgage on the property and the mortgage company would go after whatever amount that was owed them. So unless it's been completely paid for, it will not benefit the
We
owner.
could be
You have
doing
access.
a disservice in another way by selling this property to somebody and then maybe having them not meet the qualifications to stay at the home in the park, and then we have a real fork in the wheel.
Yeah, we can certainly put it on pause and evaluate it more. Like I said, this was past practice, and by all means, this is for the town.
When was this past practice? Because I don't remember in in
You sold
2018,
three.
19, or
Yeah,
20
we
or
had some in
21.
Wasn't it Pumpkin Hollow?
It must have been a year that I wasn't seated on the board because I don't recall this ever.
Yeah, I can
Occurring.
recall doing it 3 times since I've been here.
Yeah.
But make no mistake, this is the path of least resistance for the town, right? So this is what is easiest for the town.
I understand. I just
yeah.
want to do the right thing. These situations I find really distressing. I really do.
What is your metric of the right thing?
That's kind of what I needed to digest in this is what, so the right thing, if the home was completely paid for, would be to auction it and provide the additional proceeds after the park rent is caught up and the taxes are caught up to the person who lost their home.
I think that's, I love that ideal, but I don't think that that's an outcome.
These people basically abandoned this property. They haven't paid their taxes. There's a chance they could have put these things up for sale themselves. They've apparently chosen not to do that.
I think sometimes people are not even aware of what their possibilities are in situations like this. So
Look on them.
And I think, so let's, and I don't know the circumstances of other mortgages or liens on the property, that data is collected because we issue impending deed letters to all prior lien holders or mortgage holders. But in the circumstances most favorable to Tracy's concern, if there is surplus equity in the property that isn't owed to a former, that surplus equity isn't going to a private entity or corporation. That is going to a resident-owned community that allows them to invest in their park and build a surplus so that they're not chasing the town for park rent, lot rent, so they can
Paving.
And so it
plowing.
is in those circumstances, it would be a redistribution of that value.
and if that is written into the agreement with those parks, that's the most appropriate,
What do you think needs to be written about that, though?
that they would reinvest any additional.
What else would they do with it, though?
So they
I don't know, Connor. I don't sit on their boards. I don't know what they would do with it.
They have park maintenance, they have wells, they have plowing, pavement. They could reinvest into the park. They could do landscaping. I mean, I don't know what shape these are in and the size of their boards and the capabilities, but it's a yes, maybe potential.
So it sounds like some more research is warranted to find a consensus with the select board.
Good
Sorry.
on my end.
I'm just curious about that potential for discrimination.
But then we would need to look at the cooperative itself and what kind of paperwork.
I say I don't.
I think it's worth asking the question. And I think it's also worth asking the question of any additional funding above and beyond the past due park rents would be used for what?
Is there a board or branch that deals with cooperatives somewhere in the state?
They're regulated for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with those regulations because I don't exercise in that, but that's the research that I'll do. I mean, I would find it very hard to believe that they would be able to discriminate based on race, gender, ethnicity, etc.
Probably
I don't
not.
know those regulations that prevent, but I will find that out. I will ask in these two cases if there are surplus proceeds, what would be the destination of those surplus proceeds.
And then we should see if there's mortgages held on the property.
You want me to collect that?
Yeah, I really would like to know. My heart would be much more comfortable with this whole process if,
Honestly, I mean, it
is
This is
really
the-
difficult
no, I
to
hear
think
you.
over $18,000 someone lost their home. It is really difficult to think over $11,000 someone lost their home. These are not $900,000 homes, and so.
But I think you also said these homes had not been lived in for a while. Did I not hear you say that?
one of them has been lived in recently, but they haven't been there for over a month.
well,
that the
that's not
park's
very long.
going through the eviction process, and they haven't been. But, so let me just take one step back. This process is recommended, full disclosure, because it's the path of least resistance, right? So we have these properties, we don't want to hold on to these properties. This is the most efficient way to dispose of these properties. If, with this amended process, it may be that the new path of least resistance is hiring an auction company to auction them off. And so before I'm happy to do all the work, but in managing the workload of the evictions and disposing of the properties and all the rest, if it isn't a simple process, it may make more sense to hire an auctioneer and let them have a contingency sale contingent on acceptance by the park board that may or may not be successful and, may have to, continue. The reason we don't do that is because that has other complexities.
Sure.
These are just two properties, right?
Two properties.
And that would, I think, cost a bunch probably just for two properties to.
We don't pay anything, so it's paid by a buyer's.
Here's a 5% or something that, 5 or 10? 10. I think it's 10. So this 10% that when you buy one of the auction properties, you pay the auctioneer.
So any lien holders, mortgage holders, then would also then have dibs on what does the town have first dibs on what they're owed in back taxes if it goes to auction?
Yes, town is always resolved first. The bill of interpleader creates an opportunity for former lien or mortgage holders to be kind of next in line. But a town's property tax interest in a property even trumps federal liens. Interesting.
I would not be, I don't want to be in the position of forcing the park to have an unoccupied piece of property for a long period of time, because I don't think that's very good.
Their books or our books?
Well, I think just as a community, having a building that's not occupied.
How many other properties will we have going to auction?
Just these.
Well, there was one repurchased from a former owner today.
I saw that.
That is, it's hard to know. Generally, we just started the eviction process. Generally, if somebody's living in the property and plans to stay there, that motivates them to execute on either selling the property, as somebody mentioned before. In this case, they found the means to pay the past due taxes, interest, and penalties to repurchase the property. The transaction of tax deeded properties from beginning to end is incredibly labor intensive, and it takes a great deal of care and effort to get it right and to be both sympathetic and follow the laws and all the rest. So one of the properties, it's been about a year that nobody has been there.
Is the Barrington Oaks Cooperative one?
I don't know which one.
And I just want to kind of get the picture straight. Like, I don't think that, I haven't seen these properties. I don't know the people, haven't been inside. But, a lot of the times when it gets to these bad places, I have seen turnovers in mobile home parks, and sometimes they're downright disgusting. So, I don't necessarily think that there's a $330,000 golden ticket in there, but I'm in agreement with Joyce not hanging up the park on the rent and then, the town tax.
I would point out that we've contacted the owners that we know. The only ones that we've been able to identify as owners have been contacted, 3 years and given tax bills, and they've refused or not responded. I say refused,
It's just
but they haven't
unfathomable to
responded.
me, honestly, in this current housing market. These homes, if they had listed them, they would sell in a week. I don't understand. And so it is unfathomable to me to see people losing their homes in this current housing crisis.
So in one case, in the Pepperidge Woods 113 Pheasant Lane, that property is currently assessed at $234,000. The president of the park told me when I was talking to him a week and a half ago that property has probably $100,000 worth of mold remediation required.
Oh, okay.
The other home, the park leadership said that they would require that it be hauled out and replaced.
Okay.
This one is assessed at 61,000 and is a 1976 single wide.
So that actually helps. Anything
Okay,
over,
I-
I believe
thank
in
you.
83. it
I
be
can
much
feel
better.
comfortable now.
Yeah,
I got it.
anything
I got
83
what we're dealing with. So yes, I'm much more comfortable with you sharing that information and allowing the parks to do what they will with these.
Goes the
Yeah,
board.
as you can imagine, my background in homelessness
Hey, no,
really,
but
really
that's
drives
huge
my
help for the
opinion of
community
this.
Right there, for people you don't know, so that's always nice to see, but any further discussion from the
No.
board? Pursue with giving the parks control?
No, I would make a motion to allow the,
We don't need a motion
oh,
yet.
okay.
Yeah, this was just taking the temperature, which I'm very glad that we did. And I think is a very productive conversation. And it's helpful for staff to know what information is helpful for the select board to be provided up front to understand the scope. Like I said, we're immersed in this for quite literally years, and talking to the folks. And so sometimes it's difficult to figure out what piece of information to pull out. But I will still research and to try to understand what the discrimination regulations are for resident-owned communities.
Yep.
I will ask both communities, ask the leadership of both communities what they would plan to do with any surplus if it existed, and I will pull together a list of prior mortgage or lien holders on the property. And we don't always know. I don't think
What the
sometimes we don't ever
status
know what
is.
the amount
Sure.
of those. And so I'll provide that information in the next select board meeting. And in the meantime, I'll continue to work with the park leadership through the eviction process and draft agreements for the select board to consider at a future meeting for the transfer of the properties. And so, like I said, it will be a lengthy process, at least 90 days, because we have to send the 90-day letters. But that depends on when evictions are completed. Right now, well, I don't know actually what the dates are for the parks, but okay. I have my marching orders. Thank you.
Thank you. Select board member reports. Select board member Mantrek.
We've had no meetings of my group since the deliberative session for the schools.
How are you doing with the extra time?
I'm just enjoying it so much.
Excellent. Tracy?
Zoning board gave a variance for a front setback on Flower Drive for a replacement of a home. So then we reevaluated a Mary Hill Road location that wanted to go to a driveway versus road situation with the secondary road in order to reduce the impermeable surface area over wetlands, and that was approved. So that was 3 of the cases. One other case was a small side and front setback variance, and then there was a continuation of a large mixed-use proposed building on the corner of Beauty Hill.
For planning board, I think the Mary Hill and Oak Hill, which is Whitner's
Whitner's
Lane.
Run.
Whitner Run, will come before planning board tomorrow.
Oh.
But what we talked about at the last meeting was opportunities for grants that might be of interest. And so we discussed whether we would look at a land and water conservation master plan, and we decided maybe that's something we would do in the future, but not at this point. But we did want to look at a review of our septic system and stormwater regulations. And there is a grant available for $20,403.65. I expect that the planning board, based on the discussions last time, will probably agree to give a letter of support at the meeting tomorrow, but we'll see. And so that would, that project would allow us to audit our current regulatory ordinances to see if they're in compliance with good stormwater management regulations, implement a content-specific outreach campaign, so it would be pertaining to use of fertilizers around lawn. And the other would be septic ordinance. And so we discussed, there are 6 communities in New Hampshire right now that are on lakes that have septic ordinances where people have to pump out every 3 years and there are penalties if they don't.
Oh, wow.
There are some mechanisms for waivers, so if it's seasonal and there's only 1 or 2 people there, you can get a waiver to maybe go to 5 or 6 years. So we'll be looking at that.
Interesting.
Just because
Just
of
for
the concern
lakefront.
about cyanobacteria blooms
Yeah.
in lakes. So that's amazing interest, and if that goes positively tomorrow night, we'll ask the select board to also provide a letter of support.
Awesome.
Sorry, guys, my last time.
Vice Chair Gibson.
Energy Committee, we met on the 20th, Thursday. We discussed what was discussed that week as well with the select board about the 1 cent higher that the community power rate is Eversource. And so we were discussing that. We discussed the, at that time, upcoming Stratford Regional Planning field trip session that happened this past Thursday. It was in the afternoon, so I couldn't go to that meeting, but they were here to meet with the town, discuss about some of the energy initiatives. We got to meet with them as well.
Yeah, it was great, and Select Person Capello was there also, and so yeah, the members from the Stratford Regional Planning Commission and other community members came to hear presentations from the Energy Committee, the Clean Energy New Hampshire, and Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire, and I think it's safe to say that the audience was in awe of our Energy Committee, the amount they were able to get done in such a short period of time from inception. Especially considering that there was no funding for the group, and this is no staff support. I mean, this is an all volunteer group, and so it was a great way to shine a spotlight on the good work of Barrington. I don't know if
Yeah, I mean, I would expect that we're going to see budget reductions from their work. So definitely we're going to end up with a more energy efficient rec department building. So we're going to save money in heating there. The current library in heating, and I assume that meant cooling as well, is spending around $13,000 a year for the current library. With the solar, they're at this point expecting to spend about $3,100 to heat and cool that building, with possibly more savings than that. Generation on the roof of this building is ahead of schedule. Probably won't have good numbers until we've had it in use for a year, especially because when you start in the winter, that's when you're generating the of power. So that, I mean, that's 3 buildings that we should expect a significant reduction in cost to heat.
The Energy Committee also will continue working on their website, adding energy initiatives, not initiatives, education, really, on their website. They were discussing the challenge going forward to of perhaps a lack in federal funding and federal grants and stuff, and so how the Energy Committee might adapt to that changing climate and continue to do productive things for the town. They do meet this coming Thursday, March 6th, and we'll be discussing the Stratford Regional Planning, that visit and outcome from that. And if you haven't seen their agenda or minutes or attended one of their meetings, definitely recommend it. There's a lot of different things that they do discuss.
Could I make a comment, Rob? So the Energy Committee said just because they don't expect there'll be a lot of grant money available for them, that they may focus on education, perhaps with residents, school kids, whatever. And I think that is actually a really awesome thing, and to be able to have the time to do that. So I hope they see that as a really positive, I mean, not positive that we don't have federal grants that we might apply for, but that they would have the time to really spend on education.
Yeah, no, they do. They do. There's, as Connor said, a lot's been done, and education goes a long way, and they're going to adapt to whatever climate is for funding. So, Conservation met this past Thursday. Deb Clough from Don't Trash Barrington was there to present on their program and how to get the word out about recruiting volunteers for picking up trash. So that was a really good presentation. Stephen Jeffries stopped by to also discuss the petition warrant articles that he had put forward on zoning and how he thought that the Conservation Commission might be interested in those. We had another visitor, Mariah Habershaw, and she's a resident of Barrington. She works for the city of Portsmouth, testing doing water monitoring for the Bellamy Reservoir and all its tributaries, and including a lot of testing in Barrington and around Swains and stuff like that. And she's interested in working with the Conservation Commission in areas of wetland conservation, water quality, and things like that. So it's neat to have someone right here in town who's kind of another expert on the conservation type issues. We discussed the proposed turtle nesting habitat project that the New Hampshire Wildlife Federation is trying to organize, and we came up with some recommended sites for them to consider. Some of those sites were ones that the Town Lands Committee had forward in the past couple of years as well for turtle
And we put our
habitat.
neighborhood forward, so vote for us.
Yes, yes. So they did review two cases. One was the Falzone case and the Lemus case. They're probably going to go back to planning concerns around encroachment on wet buffers. So
Oh, for the Lemos one.
yeah, so
Read
they
all
want to
that, yeah.
kind of some more back and forth with that. And I do have a statement, if you would bear with me.
Of course.
Go for it.
This is the end of my 3-year term, and I want to start by, I'm going to read this. So I want to start by expressing my gratitude to the residents of Barrington for electing me 3 years ago and entrusting me with the privilege of representing your voices. Serving our community has been an incredible honor, and I am proud of the progress we have made together. I look forward to the opportunities that lie ahead for Barrington. My time on the Select Board has been deeply rewarding, and I am grateful for the opportunity to have worked alongside dedicated colleagues, committed town employees, and engaged residents. While new opportunities in the next chapter of my life prevent me from seeking re-election, my commitment to Barrington remains strong. I will continue to find ways to contribute and volunteer in support of our community. Our town is fortunate to have an outstanding team of dedicated employees who work tirelessly for our town. Under the leadership of Town Administrator Connor McIver, widely regarded as one of the top administrators in the state, Barrington has thrived. Through a collaborative and nonpartisan approach, the Select Board has worked closely with these town employees and strengthened partnerships with other boards, ensuring effective governance and a unified vision for the future. I have learned so much and grown both personally and professionally from this experience. Barrington remains a beautiful, resilient, and highly desirable place to live. Leaders and residents are dedicated to keeping our community strong, affordable, and prepared for any future challenges. Despite rising costs across the country, Barrington has maintained one of the lowest tax rates in the region and operates one of the leanest municipal governments in the state. Remember to vote on Tuesday, March 11th. And at a time when negativity and division are all too common on social media and in our nation, I am confident that the people of Barrington will come together to elect leaders who will uphold collaboration, respectful discourse, and meaningful progress for our town. Thank you again. I will truly miss serving on the Select Board.
And that will fold and will be in the minutes. Yeah.
And it's a little gift for you. So this is a custom
That is beautiful.
blacksmith out of Maine, David Corrigan, and that is Maine curly maple. And pull it out and maybe look on that side. So it is a natural steel, so you see some
Gorgeous.
Get that on there.
Oh,
Go out hiking or something, you know.
yeah, that's gorgeous.
I'm gonna miss you.
Yes. I am going to miss you guys. This has been just
Well, hey, you
an
know,
incredible
we'll,
experience.
we'll make sure we keep sending you the link.
Like I
So you can join us online.
yeah, no, like I said, I look forward to continuing as long as I'm here to keep whatever I can, still serving on energy and doing other committee work.
I'm
So
just hoping.
yeah.
Hopefully the road you travels loops back this way.
I hope so too.
Okay, that's kind of hard to follow up. But here is my report on Parks and Rec. Saturday is zip code day, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the post office. And then they also are introducing the new Trails and Ales. which is an exciting program which pairs New Hampshire scenic hikes and visits with local breweries. You can enjoy the outdoors with fellow adventurers and followed by a well-earned pint or meal at a nearby brewery. So that's really cool for residents. Always coming up with new stuff at Parks and Rec. That's all I have for my committees. Going to go ahead and open up the last public comment. There's nobody in studio, so if there's anybody in online that would like to comment, raise your hand. Seeing none, going to go ahead and close public comment. No need for non-public.
There is.
Oh, there is.
Just one quick one.
Move that we enter non-public session pursuant to revised statutes and annotated 91-A:3 Roman 2 for purposes of legal.
And I second that.
Roll call.
Mancheck, aye.
Hardikoff, aye.
WLOI.
Gibson, aye.
Koshak.
You're live?
Welcome back. We just came out of non-public. Nothing left for the meeting. I will entertain a motion.
I move that we,
I think there's a need to seal anything.
Nope.
So
Aye.
Sharon.
Aye.
8:22 adjourned.